Hey boys and girls, Mr. D here. In this video, you're going to learn how to use the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. Again, if we just sort of refer back to some of our prior notes here, we've been talking about ways we can find different solutions, or the x-intercepts of the quadratics. So in this video here, we're going to actually be looking at the quadratic formula. Okay, we've done completing the square. We've done all these other four. We know how to graph parabolas. We've talked about how to use square roots. We've done those examples. We've done the zero product rule and completing the square. And now we're up to the quadratic formula. You will use this one probably more often than completing the square. As I said in class, you probably use the zero product rule and the quadratic formula the most often. So let's take a look here what we got. This here is an example of the quadratic formula. Right here, again, this is our standard form. Essentially what we're doing is we're saying, hey, y equals 0, and we try to factor this. Okay, excuse me. So as we were saying, is this is the quadratic formula. Again, we're looking at the standard form here. We're trying to find the x-intercept. So y is 0. And if, per se, we could not factor this, we can always put it into the quadratic formula. Even if we could factor, we could use the quadratic formula. However, usually we would not do that because it's a little bit more lengthy. So this is our formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. This is a formula you've got to memorize, and over time you will use it enough where it will become automatic. Let's take a look at an example here. So example 1, 2x squared minus 8x minus 24 equals 0. So if we take a look here, our a, you guys know this, a equals 2, b equals negative 8, and our c equals negative 24. And with that, I mean, this really just goes back to the ideas that we learned in Chapter 1, plugging in for a variable expression given numbers here. So here's our equation. We're just going to take these numbers and plug them in for the respective letters. So here's the first step, plugging in. So negative, and then our b is negative 8. So negative 8 plus or minus our b squared, negative 8. Notice we use the parentheses to plug in. Minus 4 times a, which is 2, and times c, which is negative 24. And on the bottom, or the denominator, we have 2 times 2, which is 2 times a. As we move forward and simplify this, our bottom becomes simply 4. Out front here, negative is positive 8. And then inside our square root sign, we've got positive 64. And if we go through and do the math here, 48 times 4 is 192. So if you look, they keep this minus sign. We'll keep this minus sign right here, and we got minus, okay? And we'll clean that up in just a second. So minus we know is plus. 64 plus 192 will give us 256. So 8 plus or minus the square root of 256 over 4. Well, we know plus or minus the square root of 256 would be 16. Right, 16 is the square root there. So, and what we could do here is, essentially what you got is 8. There's a couple ways you can work this out. I'm not crazy about how they worked it out there. They divided everything by 4. So you got 8 divided by 4 is 2. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So 2 plus or minus 4. You could do that. If that seems confusing to you, you can say 8 plus 16 is 24 over 4. And then you could do 8 minus 16, or 8 minus 16, which is negative 8 over 4. So those would be your two answers. And of course we could simplify that. 24 over 4 is 6. Negative 8 over 4 is negative 2. Which same thing you get here. If you do 2 plus 4, you get positive 6. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. But again, so what they did here is they divided 8 divided by 4, 16 divided by 4. You would have to divide both of these terms by the denominator here. We haven't done a whole lot of that this year, but I think some of us are familiar with that. That's why I say we may be better off simplifying the numerator initially, then dividing. Either way is acceptable. You see we end up with the same answer. Okay. Make sure you've got that all down. You can pause the video if you need to. If I went too quick, replay it if you need to. I'm going to move on to example 2. So if you need to press pause, now is a great time to do it. So let's take a look at example 2 here. Our A equals 2, B equals 12, and C equals 10. Okay, so let's set up our formula. X equals negative 12 plus or minus square root of 12 squared minus 4 times 2 times 10. And all of this is going to be over 2 times 2. So we go down to the next step here. We got x equals negative 12. And then we have plus or minus square root of 144, 12 squared, right? And 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 10 is 80, so minus 80. And at the bottom we've got 4. So 144 minus 80 is going to give us 64. So we got the square root of 64. Sorry, I'm working a little backwards there, but plus or minus, oh, that's my plus sign. Plus or minus, we got negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 64 over 4. Alright, square root of 64, we know that is 8, so let's sign over here, negative 12 plus or minus 8 over 4. So we've got to work with both positive 8 and negative 8. So if we do negative 12 and negative 8, negative 12 minus 8 over 4. Well, that's negative 20 over 4, which is equal to negative 5. Okay, and if I wanted to do positive 8, we'll do the positive 8 over here. So negative 12 plus 8 over 4. Well, negative 12 plus 8 is negative 4. Negative 4 over 4, well, that would just give me negative 1. So what we end up with here then is we'd say our x-intercepts, or x equals, I'll put it right here, x equals negative 5, comma, negative 1. So again, if we graphed this equation out, y equals 2x squared plus 12x plus 10, the x-intercepts would be negative 5 and negative 1. That's essentially what it's finding out. Okay, so that's how you use the quadratic formula. It is a little bit long. You've got to work through it carefully. If we do some where you get a negative square root, for now you would just put no solution. Again, eventually you guys will get to the point where we start to use I as an imaginary number and we calculate the square root of a negative number in that manner, but we're not there yet. So if you get the square root of a negative number, you can just stop where you are and you can write no solution. Okay? Hope you guys found this helpful, and I'll see you guys in class.